Hey guys, we're back, and sorry for those little technical difficulties earlier. But like I said before, we'll make sure to get you that segment that you missed as a recording. But right now, I want to say hello to Eris, and she's going to be talking about future-proofing the arts and creative industries today. And so she's been a creative, multi-passionate entrepreneur for a long time, and on a mission to change the world in many meaningful ways. And art and the creative side of things really interesting to her, and in her own self-exploration. And she has a very big belief that arts really touch every life in some way, whether it's entertainment, beauty, inspiration, or someone's creative business or process. And there's a lot of power in creative people that honestly I think we're just really starting to break the surface of today. So it's part of her mission to really future-proof the arts and creative industry, and I'm excited to have her here today to talk about that with you guys.
Thanks, Tim. I'm really, really glad to be here. And when you invited me to be a part of the Global Hope Summit, I was only worried that I could do it justice. Seriously, 2020 has been tough, especially for artists and creatives. So today I'd like to bring some hope to any artist or creative person who is feeling like they're lost, confused, or disconnected from a bigger purpose. Artists in particular have had concerts and gigs and shows and markets and productions canceled, and virtually every method that provides an income to a traditional creative has been wiped out or put on hold this year. And if a creative didn't already have that income, it might seem near impossible in the current financial climate to get their dreams off the ground. But there's hope, because on the other hand, 2020 has provided one huge benefit. It's lit a fire under people to create change. And in the face of fewer options and opportunities, people are finding and forming new ways and methods of doing things. And miraculously, things we thought would never work, art shows, performances, sales of creative works, free education, have successfully moved online, and faster than we ever thought would have been possible. Opportunities that were already ripe are now getting the buy-in they deserve by a larger distribution of people. That means we're hitting a critical mass, which is only going to make things easier and more efficient as we go forward, but only for those willing to step up and embrace the change. Now, in short, now is the best time in history to be an independent creative. Now, why does any of this actually matter in the context of hope and the future? Well, take a moment to imagine a world without art. Music, books, film, photography, dance, theater, crafts, and artisanal works all gone, poof, from our lives. Now, what kind of a world would that be? You see, artists have the power to change the world. We have changed the world. We can create inspiration and hope in the darkest moments and promote healing and unity through our creativity. And when we support the arts, we support the future of humanity with creativity and individuality that supports conversations, brings beauty, unity, and inspiration to the world. When I founded my most recent business, Arts and Company, I decided to focus on future-proofing the arts. And I know that it's a great cause, because I know the incredible power the arts hold over our collective minds, hearts, and spirits. But to even begin to get started on such a massive endeavor, I had to first identify the issues and then the unique ways in which I'd approach them. You see, I wanted to create real, valuable, and lasting changes in the arts. And I knew it had to be different than the things we've tried before, because they are not working. Museums, schools, cultural centers, and historical sites are constantly underfunded and not well cared for. The arts have become inaccessible in so many ways and in so many manners. Every day, somewhere, we are not only losing legacy and heritage arts that define our global cultures, we also lose funding and support that can keep those arts alive. Contemporary artists also struggle to make ends meet and gain the recognition they deserve. I mean, how many artists do you know who are living their ideal lives, fulfilled with their daily work, making a positive impact in the world that matters to them and those around them? And if I was able to take a show of hands right now, I'm relatively sure there would be none or very few hands up. Now, how many artists do you know who are struggling to make a living doing what they love, who have difficulty being seen, appreciated, and rewarded for their hard work and talent? I'd say we each know at least a few starving artist types. So you see, we're already living in a dystopian state where artists exist in high numbers. But this fundamental part of the human experience, which connects us all, has been rendered non-viable by our broken systems. Now, imagine a world in which the arts and creative works were truly valued, cherished, and supported, and not just by governments and nonprofit entities, but by people and even by the artists themselves. This is the world that I want to contribute to creating. And this is the reality that could be with the resources we already have in front of us right now, today, if we only begin to shift how we approach these problems. So, how do we create lasting and meaningful change for the arts and creative industries that protects and supports them? In other words, how do we future-proof them? Well, we can face those big systemic issues top down. We could try to change the sloth-like behemoth that is the traditional fine arts, the nonprofit model, and our broken education systems. Or we can try a different approach. We start with the artists themselves. I vote for the latter. Now, let me share with you how we got here. Arts have long been considered a huge part of culture throughout history. They've been institutionalized and treated like a nice to have instead of the must have that they really are. And the details of that statement are not for today's discussion, but there is considerable evidence to back up how the artistic creativity of us humans helps us develop mentally and emotionally, and ties us together socially, and provides healing when we are sick. Throughout history, there have been certain creative individuals celebrated for their immense talent and abilities to inspire, entertain, beautify, and literally change the world. We all know the names of several famous artists who wrote, performed, crafted, painted, and designed their way to fame, despite being cogs in a bigger machine. It wasn't until recently, the 20th century, that society has given way to the self-made creative. You know, it's also created some of the greatest wealth in the creative industries that we've ever seen. However, most of that wealth has been made through the exploitation of talent rather than support. And the changes promoted by the Industrial Revolution changed the arts as well as industry. Opportunities were created, but for the few chosen ones, and they came attached with lots of negative outcomes for that talent. And here's how that system used to work. Around the turn of the 20th century, technological innovation was beginning to boom, and a few people were smart enough to see what the future held. And those who knew the power of the media began building empires around entertainment, music, film, literature, and fine arts. Commercial wars were waged, and some of them were very dirty. It became apparent that there was talent out there in the wild, and there was big money if it could be tamed. Thus, old Hollywood, the music, entertainment, and publishing industries, and the fine arts gallery system were created around the idea that the business side of things was best left to the professionals, and the creative talent was nice to look at, but needed to be controlled for the good of the system. Now, we call this corporate capitalism, and the main point was to make money for those who already had it. For over a century in our recent history, countless artists of all kinds were made to sign their lives away under the promise of being made a star. Many of them lived secret lives of misery before dying broke and broken. All the while, the industries behind this system raked in the cash. And you might wonder how this system survived for so long under those circumstances. And there are a few reasons. One, the talent pool was pretty large, and it still is. And they were made to believe they were disposable and shouldn't be sticking their noses where they didn't belong. In other words, the business side of things. Two, it took great financial power to get these things off the ground, which meant only a few people were positioned to even get started. And three, back then, the risk of failure was great and could ruin a person's whole life. So very few people even tried. Now, even though things have drastically changed, we're left with a legacy that still exploits the talent. Even to this day, an advance from a big name music label, and sometimes literary publishers, is a disguised loan against an artist's future earnings. So these systems were designed to take advantage of the possibility. In effect, these systems operated like venture capitalists, taking a gamble on the talent and hoping they'd pick a winner. But where does that leave the losing talent? Much like a losing racehorse put out to pasture, or worse, when things don't work out. So changes have taken place more recently that have once again shifted the balance and carry with them huge opportunity and growth. But as good little creatives, we've been taught we don't have a place at this abundant table. And this is where we need to stop the old school thinking about how arts are expendable and unnecessary. We creatives are not disposable. I have watched and studied and consulted and considered this problem in depth. Knowing what I know now and have learned over a long career, which spans several disciplines, I now feel there are obvious solutions to these problems. And I based Arts and Company on these three pillars as the foundation for these solutions: technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So technology, because it's the foundation of our future as we know it. Innovation, because it's creativity in its highest form, and it's absolutely necessary for growth. And entrepreneurship, because it not only empowers people to live better lives, but the impact they can make is multiplied through purpose-driven business practices. So to me, it's becoming increasingly clear where arts should reside in the new system. The greatest positive future can be facilitated through purpose-driven entrepreneurship and technological innovation, but on the public side, through individual, independent artists and creatives everywhere. Independent and self-employed creatives taking charge of their own creative destiny is where the three pillars of technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship meet. And it's time to take back our power and claim our place in the world. The growing number of self-employed independent creative types working in the arts and creative industries is a good indicator of what's to come. Because until very recently, it was difficult to be self-employed and independent, but now it's nearly a cakewalk. Risk and reward have been utterly flipped on their heads in the last 50 years. It's no longer life-threatening to fail. It's actually a daily necessity. And if you know anything about entrepreneurship, you'll know that creativity and problem solving are at the heart of it all. Now, what, if anything, do artists and creatives do but solve problems in hyper-creative ways every single day? There is no better match for entrepreneurship than a creative. In fact, the National Endowment for the Arts in the US, who, by the way, has a whole department dedicated to studying the impact that artists can create in their communities and towards global innovation, estimates that artists are 350% more likely to become entrepreneurs than the general workforce. But how many of those creatives end up building successful and sustainable, purpose-driven businesses in the arts? Not many, yet. So how exactly did all this become possible? The short answer is the internet, the startup culture, and a new age of technological growth and innovation. The internet has created an explosion in entrepreneurship, and technology has democratized and commoditized many of those out-of-reach opportunities of the past. Social media, online payment systems, accounting, peer-to-peer marketplaces, and fundraising platforms have all created a perfect storm designed to take anyone who wants it from starving artist to thriving artist. The barriers keeping creatives from a life designed to be fulfilling and rewarding to them lie just beyond this digital frontier. Unfortunately, despite all of these positive changes, there are many issues that still face us creatives even today. For one, there's a lack of respect for those of us who want to make a living doing what we love. which ranges from discouragement to outright abuse. I'm sure you've heard some of these stories. It's so disheartening to hear stories of all out war within families, or worse, people who were literally beaten into denying a future in the arts. I mean, imagine being a young creative person and getting a physical whipping because your parent doesn't agree with your life choice to become an artist before you even get to try. The high cost of higher arts education is another issue. There's little prospect of ongoing success because schools are not teaching the practical skills needed to survive. So we're all playing a game of modern capitalism, but most creatives are never taught the rules. In fact, we're often told we're not even on the team, but we are, and we should be playing our best game. And last, artists' own concepts of who they are and what value they bring to the world is a huge challenge. I've met so many people who wouldn't dare call themselves artists, despite their obvious talent. And if you ask an artist what value they bring to others through their talents, they probably won't be able to articulate it. We need to change a lot of things. There is a lot we have to overcome to move forward, but it's waiting for us if we're willing to chase that dream. Now, my own story may be similar to yours or someone that you know. As a creative child, I was encouraged to develop my skills in drawing, illustration, voice, and performance. And I grew up being told that I had great talent. And I knew that I wanted to do something artistic as my future. But I was never empowered to take charge of my future. So instead of working towards my dreams and goals, in my family, there was a lot of talk about getting a job as an artist. And unfortunately, no planning. I mean, that didn't happen. While I was lucky to have so much positivity around my talent, I was still left without guidance. And I went into the world unprepared for a future as a working artist. I had to find my own way. In one way that was both freeing and terrifying. And I ended up going to college and dropping out of art school in order to find something that fit me and my goals better. Because the fine arts are absolutely amazing and there are tons of talented people. But I knew I wanted a clear path and a plan for a steady income. And I knew something was missing for me in that space. It was in a job that I finally found the mentorship that I needed. My first real creative mentor showed me the ropes of digital design and taught me the insider secrets of the freelancer world. When I went back to tell my mother that I wanted to buy my first very expensive computer and everything I'd need to start my own freelance business, it did not go down so well. Weirdly, it was the first time we'd ever really been at odds about my artistic talent, and it seemed to be completely about the risk involved in being independent. So my story is full of contradictions, and maybe that's because my mother was an artist and couldn't find her own success as a musician or a painter, among other things that she did. And like other parents, she probably didn't want to see me fail. Also, like other parents, she may have been the one to ensure my failure through her own fears and restrictions on my opportunities. It was as if I was allowed to dream, but not too big. And definitely not if it started getting real. So I experienced tons of setbacks along every path that I took as a working creative. And I had to navigate abusive relationships, people stealing my art and ideas, and they never even mentioned my name, let alone getting compensated. I got involved with some shitty people that only wanted to take from me. I suffered financial insecurities and so much more, like most starving artists. But I found myself in those lessons. And it took a long while, but eventually I found success in a number of different creative projects and endeavors. So I've been a professional illustrator, a voice artist, a filmmaker, a songwriter, an actress, a graphic designer, a writer, a singer, a costume designer, a maker, artisan, and more. Slowly, through and across it all, I began to see the patterns of success. And ultimately, entrepreneurship gave me the chance to try out many things to see if I enjoyed them and to decide for myself if I wanted to pursue them further. And all while getting paid to do so. It was really hard work and scary at times. So I understand that feeling. it was also heartbreaking. When I started, the opportunities were nothing like they are now. The independence and learning that has come from envisioning and creating a life I love is something I would never give back, though. And I can't imagine not having chosen my own path. And I'm still on that path, envisioning, building, and growing my life. And now I want to help others do the same. So I would love to know that every child feeling drawn to a creative life knows that there's great opportunity and choices for their future as an artist. And I would love to see every creative anywhere be equally endowed with the chance to build a life they love through their talent. I would love to take anyone who dreams of creating a better world by serving bigger purposes through their unique gifts and talent, along with me, as we learn how to provide for ourselves by building our creative empires. And if you think for some reason that you aren't cut out to be an entrepreneur or run a business as an artist, you absolutely are. Thousands of people have done this successfully, and it's only getting easier right now. Besides, let me remind you of the alternatives, because all of those traditional jobs that we used to rely on for safety and certainty, they do not offer those promises anymore. Not for you or your partner or your friends and families who may support you. It is time to stand up for what's yours and create your own security through your own business skills and vision for your life. Now, if you still think that money ruins creativity and it lessens its inherent value, consider how much freedom that financial peace of mind provides. Because that's the freedom that will allow you to create your greatest life works. Guaranteed. No suffering or starving artist ever did their best work under duress and in poverty. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you could provide for yourself and your family and never have to choose between your art and your income again? I think so. More so, what if you could create the kind of change in the world you want to see while doing what you love? You can, through entrepreneurship, through innovation, through embracing technology. And whether you're an artist in hiding, as I like to call those who put their dreams on hold for families and other opportunities and greener pastures, someone who's found success and is working hard for more, maybe you've been trying and dabbling and you see that there's a path, but you haven't figured it out yet. Or if you're just out of school right now and you're facing mounting bills and debt, I know there's a path to success for you right here. Here are some things that you need to do right now to get started. So mindset is often the first and biggest obstacle. It really starts with your identity as an artist, and it leads into the possibilities that you believe in. So start by embracing your identity as a creative. Own it. Tell people what you are. They will listen, but you have to believe it. Second, open yourself to the possibility of being successful, because there are role models and case studies and mentors everywhere. You just have to be open. The second big thing is the information out there. There's practical information all over the internet, and it's often free, and I want you to go get it. But I also want you to remember that all of that free information can be overwhelming. And in the entrepreneurial world, action is key. And most people actually fail because they don't take action. I want you to go get mentorship and community for support and guidance to get all the right information for you at exactly the right times in your path. I also want you to treat your future as an artist like the job you wish you had. You need to build it. You need to take control and learn the business like you learned your craft. It's the single most leveraged and rewarding path to a future that no one can take away from you. Lastly, I encourage you to envision a future in which you build a sustainable business that provides for you and those you care about and supports a cause bigger than yourself that you believe in, because it nourishes your heart and it directly changes the world. Today, you have my encouragement, support, and yes, even permission. We often need to hear that to share your greatness with the world. And now you have the knowledge to do it. And if you're interested in learning more about what I'm doing, helping artists and creatives of all disciplines to start, build, grow, and scale their businesses, we're doing that over at artpreneurs.com. And whether you want to join me or you resonate with some other mentors, teachers, or guides, I leave you with this question. When the page turns on this chapter and your next chapter opens, what life do you want to have lived? And what legacy do you hope to leave? And thank you. Thank you for having me.
Wow, that was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I first just want to say thank you. And I think right now, this, creative side of humanity that's coming out, more and more, like we have opportunities to express ourselves. More and more, we have opportunities to live the life that we want to create. And like you said, technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, all of those things have really created this. And creative people are going to define the future. And so it's so important for anyone watching this, any creatives out there to find those places and find, I call it often play, find the place where your play is, and where you can really deeply enjoy that and learn through that and explore. So I would love to just ask you, where do you, what's the first place or the first step that an aspiring artist or a person who wants to turn art into a business for themselves, what's the first step they should take?
I would say that at this point in time, a lot of people are struggling financially, and the first question they want answered is, "Where's the money at?" And the money is right now, and the opportunity right now is on the internet. So there are lots and lots of ways to make money through art on the internet, and I would think about your creative space and what you do. And a really good technique is to go searching for what other people are searching for. So if you do something very specific and you're trying to find an audience, you go do the same search that they would do. Find out who's serving that need. And if you can fill a space in there, that's one way to pick up some really quick money to get you through some tough times. But when you're thinking about building a business, we're talking about, solving long-term problems and building sustainability. So quick cash is great and we all need it, but you'll want to think about a path going forward. And that usually looks like planning out some things, pieces of your business. You need to understand who you're serving, what problem you're solving, how you're going to deliver, where you find them. All of those things are absolutely necessary to building a business. So if somebody's really serious about that and they want it to be something a little more long-term than gigging or freelancing, then they're going to want to look at, what's our big plan here? What's the vision? How does it play out? Why do I do it? Who can I align with? Those kinds of questions need to be answered to make it a real business and to make it something that's going to work long term.
Yeah, I love it. The beautiful thing is, as creatives, we're also empowered to be creative in creating opportunities, right? So,
oh yeah, we can see stuff.
Yeah.
We can see these like there's a hole over there, and somebody's like, "Hey, look, it's empty," and we're like, "No, it's not. It's filled with my vision."
Yeah, I know this has been also really key for me. I mean, and I know you're the same way. Like, we have thousands of interests, thousands of things that spark our various endeavors or things we want to learn or create. How do you, as like I guess the word is multi-potentialite, like how do you go out and how do you decide where you're going to move forward, which path you're going to take?
So it's interesting you mentioned that. There's a lot of words floating around. I like to call it creative SOS. It's shiny object syndrome. I think every creative suffers from it. Nobody gets away, but you have to have a solution. And that solution is generally, what are your goals? You have to put your energy in the most efficient outcome possible. So when you're thinking about how you're going to solve an issue of like the issue of having too many interests is, let's settle on something that suits your goals, that aligns with who you are and what you want in the world. And let's focus on that. And when you can really focus on that and you know that you're going to seek out an answer, a solution, or an end goal, you work on that and you work on that. That's it. Like alone, you just focus. And that's one of the hardest things to do. I mean, I actually have had many of those experiences throughout my life. As a multi-passionate or multidisciplinary person, I've wanted to do a little bit of everything all the time. I've had to really scale it back, and that's what this, 2020 for me was great, because it's like, okay, I don't have to worry about all this other stuff that keeps distracting me.
Yeah.
I've got an amount of focus I can put.
Mm.
In fact, we all had a little extra time on our hands. Hopefully,
Yeah.
people were sitting back and thinking, what is the rest of my life going to look like? Because it gave us some mental space. Yeah, but it's really about paring down to what makes you happy. You don't want to let go of some of those very important things to you, but if they're not on the path to a goal, then they're kind of a hobby, where the path to a goal is like, I'm working on this and I'm going to get an outcome. That's where your focus goes. The rest is like for funsies. You keep it there to kind of like, give yourself
Yeah.
that space you need.
Yeah, that's so awesome, and I agree. That's kind of the biggest gift of all of this time, right? Is I think someone earlier on the summit called it a timeout, right? It's like, this is time for you to take a step back and figure out and connect to the part of you that, sort of that deeper, like, this is who I am, and I think that's been an amazing thread throughout this whole weekend. So I just want to say thank you for joining us here. It's been amazing. This was incredible information, and very inspiring what you're doing at Artpreneurs, and love how much you're taking everything that you've done in your life and really helping an incredible group of people who really need it right now. So thank you so much, and I look forward to the next time we get to talk.
Thanks, Tim. It was nice to see you again.
Thanks too.
Welcome everyone. So I'm super excited for you in this session because we're going to really do a deep dive on what is the process of restoring not only your own health, but in that process, how do you restore faith in yourself and in humanity? So all of you listeners at this amazing Global Health Summit, I honor you for being here and being on this session because I believe this tiny seed that you're about to get will grow into one of the biggest plants with the biggest impact on the world that you can actually imagine. And so while that sounds unbelievable, at the end of this session, you're going to understand how this is possible and how you have infinitely more power and more influence than you currently realize. And so, in case you don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Steve, and I've been in this space of healing humans for the last 20 plus years. And a lot of people ask me, well, how did I get here? Right? How do I get to speak on stages and speak at events and run global corporations? And I explained to them, well, one, I'm blessed and honored. And two, it's from a series of what I call magical breadcrumbs in my life. And you'll see later in this session why this is so important. Right? And I'll explain to you that my first magical breadcrumb was in fact from the fact that I grew up dirt poor. When we moved from Taiwan, which is where I was born, to America when I was 8 years old, we literally picked from the trash for our furniture. We lived in a trailer park where the building I was in was just big enough for a bed, right? And just enough to walk around the bed, and that's it. There was no bathroom, no kitchen, no other room, just the bed. In fact, whenever we had to go to the bathroom and eat, we had to go across the way to another trailer where my grandparents owned and use their facilities, right? I mean, literally, I was like grateful for winter because we can actually drink milk, and we would keep the milk and cold food outside because we didn't have a refrigerator, right? And so I was very, very grateful. And it was a great time for me to practice gratitude, right? I was very grateful for the little things that we had because we had nothing. And so from doing that, I will say that I knew something was missing, right? So, I mean, my mom worked like 80 hours a week. I barely saw her. And so I found comfort in sort of that chaos in playing a lot of video games, literally like 16 hours a day. Because back then, this is like 30 plus years ago, you couldn't pause video games like you could do now. So if you start a video game and, unless you finish it, you got to start over. So I would finish it, thus the 16 to 20 hours of video games. And so the entire day, as I sat there and played video games on certain days, I would basically just put a bag of Oreo cookies next to me, some water, and that was my entire days of nutrition. Oreo cookies, sometimes Chips Ahoy, especially the soft kind, it's amazing, and water and video games. And so you can imagine from doing that for years, that would not produce a very healthy child, right? So I was very unhealthy. I had horrible allergies. I was so weak. Another magical breadcrumb is during high school, freshman year, when they do the presidential fitness test, I couldn't do a pull-up. And when they did the mile run, I got lapped. Now just keep in mind, there's only 4 laps, right, in the mile run. I got lapped, right? That's how horrible health and poor shape I was in. And so that was my second magical breadcrumb because I kind of realized this is deathly embarrassing. And so from that high level of embarrassment and the desire to not feel that ever again, I started my journey of learning about health. And so I started realizing that actually it was more than just about nutrition and exercise, the typical stuff. At least when I was young, I had some awareness that how we thought was at the foundation of our health. And so my first study when I was 14 was into the study of the mind, right? My first book that I read was called Psycho-Cybernetics. It's basically a book on how do you program the subconscious mind. And so I started with that, and I started to reprogram my thinking process. And so then I started to do the typical improved nutrition. I used to bring my own food to school once I realized how unhealthy school lunch was. And I started to exercise and do all kinds of different things for my health. So that started me on this amazing path of studying how a human system operates and how do we optimize and heal that system, right? So I went on and I got a degree in biomechanics from Penn State, and I got my master's and my doctorate in physical therapy here in Heidelberg in Pennsylvania. And I learned a lot about health. In fact, during that time, I also taught physiology, which is chemically how the body works, to doctors at Rutgers here in New Jersey, where I'm at. And I learned a lot during that process, but it wasn't until the third magical breadcrumb that led me to doing what I'm doing here and why I am speaking to you. You see, that third magical breadcrumb was when my wife, 14 years ago, almost died. She literally went from completely fine to within a week being in the hospital for a week, being fed through an IV because she couldn't hold down any food or water. And so the doctors diagnosed her with ulcerative colitis. Literally, her intestines were bleeding. They were like melting in the inside. And so they basically offer us a choice. Either go on medications, 2 medications for the rest of her life, or have her suffer like this. And so at least by then, I already knew enough where I was like, this can't be the way. This can't be the only possible path. And so I reached out to a friend of mine that I met when I was at Penn State, and I knew he was doing some pretty amazing out-of-the-box stuff. And to make a long story short, she went from suffering and losing 20% of her body weight within a week or two, like almost dying. She weighed like 96 pounds, literally skin and bones, to being fully cured in 6 weeks. Right? And so essentially, how was she cured? Well, he did more advanced testing that was available, figured out the root cause of why she had the symptoms of ulcerative colitis, and then we got rid of the root cause. Right? And so, and the root cause in her case was a specific strain of bacteria that basically was causing all the damage. And now that seems so logical and obvious, the best hospital in Pennsylvania did not do those tests. All they did was stick a camera in her butt and go, yep, it's bleeding, so let's take these medications, right? And so that really woke me up. It really helped me realize, oh my God, our entire system of supporting a human called healthcare isn't quite working. Right? And so I started, this was 14 years ago, so for the last 14 years, I've looked at so many different ways of how a human functions. And so in this session, you're going to get a framework that I developed that fully allows a person to be restored. And you're going to get not only information, because information is somewhat useless unless you act on it, you're going to get specific actionables that you're going to do to actually restore your system, right? Now, granted, typically I share this in an entire week's worth of lectures and courses, and now I only have a certain amount of time. Don't worry. At the end of this session, you're gonna get actionables and a gift from me. It's a pay it forward from me because I saw my wife suffer and I don't want any human to ever suffer like that, ever. You're gonna get a resource to actually get an entire full course of this topic for you for absolutely no cost, right? And so, because in this course, in this session, I want you to fully, deeply pay attention to the context of what I'm about to say, and then you're gonna get the actionables. Don't worry about, hey, am I gonna get enough for this to work? You're gonna get it all, right? And so, before we get to the actionables, I find that when actionables are just given, and people don't understand the context of why, the motivation to do the actionable is very low. And so before I get to the actionables, I'm going to give you some context, right? Because if you understand the landscape, the context of what's happening, you will infinitely be more motivated to act on the actionables. And ultimately, it's acting on the actionables on a very consistent basis that gets the habits developed for you to become a person of health, right? And when I say health, I don't mean just being healthy. I mean mental health, physical health in every which way. And you're going to learn the huge ripple effects of that, right? Because for me, planting the seed in you allows this massive tree to grow that has impact on humanity. Because I believe many of us do not fully realize just how influential and just how powerful we can be. So you will realize this at the end of this session. Okay, so what is the context? Just to give you some backdrop. Since 1976 in America, this is happening worldwide, we are living in one of the most toxic times in human history. And I'll talk about toxins from different perspectives. So in this case, we'll start with biological or chemical toxic, right? And so I'll give you some data. Since 1976, 82,000 new chemicals have been introduced. And basically that's saying 82,000 new drugs, right, have been made, right, just like a new drug. And they've been put in your mouth, on your skin, and they've had you breathe it with almost no testing on human safety. About 300 out of 82,000 have human safety testing, right? That's unfathomable if you think about it. And so the reason this is, in the drug industry, they do have to go through FDA approval to do studies to make sure it's safe. In the industrial chemical perspective, keep in mind when they invent an industrial chemical, it's a drug. It's the same thing, right? No different. It's just that this drug, this chemical, is being put in your soap, your shampoo, your deodorant. It's on the clothes that you buy. It's definitely in a car that you're rubbing your arms on, every fabric that you're touching. The new furniture that you buy has these chemicals on it. It's everywhere. It's in the food. It's sprayed on your food, but yet they don't need any human safety testing. All right. And so I'll give you some more definitive data because that's a little bit too broad. In Europe, there's 1,016 chemicals they've identified as being so cancerous they've banned it all because they're typically in soap, shampoo, lotion, and personal care products and makeup. In America, all 1,016 are allowed. Yep. There are 76 pesticides all other countries have banned. In America, all 76 are allowed. And so what are the effects of some of these pesticides? Well, I'm going to give you one of the more popular ones. A study found that 1 drop of this pesticide in 1 billion drops of water, that's like a lake, is enough to turn a male frog into a female frog. Yep. And so it's very hormone toxic, very estrogen, right? Very female-like. That's how it's able to turn a male frog into a female frog. And so this is what's happening to us. We're being exposed to chemicals. And in one of my businesses where we actually can fully test people's blood and people's urine, their pee, we're finding off the charts levels of many toxins, right? And this is confirmed. Last year they did a study where they tested a bunch of average Americans and they found between 300 to 700 industrial chemicals on average in an adult and 200 industrial chemicals in a newborn baby, right? And so that's a lot of chemicals. And so that is the state, the chemical toxin state of the world right now. So, but there's also mental toxicity, right? Like if you're watching this and you're, 40, 50 years old and plus, just think the news now versus the news 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and 30 years ago is completely different, right? We're seeing much more violence, right, in the news and violence in the movies. We're just being exposed to not only more data, that data has infinitely more violence, fear, anxiety, stress, chaos, uncertainty embedded into the message. It just wasn't the case 40, 50, 60 years ago. It's every decade it's become exponentially higher. And that's sort of the mental toxicity that is affecting humans. And what are the effects of this, right? Well, we can see statistics, 1/3 of Americans have prediabetes or diabetes, right? That means 1/3 of Americans have a blood sugar issue. There are studies showing 1/3 of Americans are obese, 40% are overweight. Cancer rates are predicted to be, in certain countries, like in Ireland, 50% incidence of cancer, right? That means if you live in Ireland, in your lifetime, you have a 50% chance of getting cancer. In America, depending upon male or female, it's around 42%. And it's increasing, right? And so this is the context. And so if you think about it, when we go into healthcare, right, when we go to the doctor, the system is filled with loving doctors, right? Your doctor does care about you. No child grows up to high school says, hey, I'm going to go to medical school to not be effective. Of course, you go to medical school because you want to help people. And so, but the system is what's currently ineffective, right? Because the system, to give you context of healthcare, when you go to your doctor, just think when you get your blood test to see how healthy you are, right, on a yearly basis, that test hasn't been updated in your entire lifetime, right? It's been the same test. And so, but look at technology. The rest of technology has grown exponentially, but yet the test to discern are you healthy is exactly the same. And interestingly, if you think about it, let's say you drink a 2 liter of soda, right, every day. I'm just exaggerating, but let's say you do. You drink 2 liters soda every day, or you eat lots and lots of white bread and drink lots of juice. Basically, you eat lots of sugar and refined carbohydrates on a daily basis for a decade. Well, you can imagine what your doctor would say if you went to the doctor, right? So your doctor would say, wow, your blood sugar is high, you have diabetes. So let's put you on these drugs for your diabetes. Imagine if they did something else, right? Because when they say you have diabetes, is already imparting that you have this thing. It's a part of you, right? That's sort of the worst way to think about it. A little bit less worse would be if they simply said you have the symptoms of diabetes, right? That's very different than you have diabetes. You have the symptoms of diabetes, right? You can write one is a part of you. Now you just have the symptoms of it, but you don't have the thing, right? I'll give you an analogy. Imagine you have a child. The child comes home from school and gets an F or a D on a report card. You would just say, oh, next time you can study more, you can be more prepared. You would never say to your child, you have stupidity, right? But the doctors will say, you have blank. Ultimately, the best thing would be, hey, you have currently less ability to manage your blood sugar because for the last 10 years, you've been eating too much sugar. If they worded that way, of course, you would go, oh, this is about my behavior and my choices, which is where the root causes are. Then you would change your root causes. See, the system doesn't frame it this way because this is a cure. This does not feed the system. Right? I want you to understand the context. One diabetic patient is worth $250,000 lifetime into the industrial medical complex. Do you think the industrial medical complex wants to cure it? Right? And so now this may sound surprising, shocking. You might even think like this is conspiracy theory. This is just business, right? Because if they were to want to cure it, instead of $250,000 per patient, which if you do the math, right, there's 300 million people in America, 100 million, 1/3 have it. 100 million people times $250,000 is a lot, right? $2.5 trillion. That's a lot of money, right? And so what can we do? Well, now that you understand the context, we're going to talk about what are the framework. How do we actually find root causes, right? And so at Immortal, which is one of the companies that I have, we developed this framework on how do you actually identify the root causes of people's symptoms, right? Just keep in mind that whenever, if you're watching this and you've been labeled by a doctor with a diagnosis, I want you to immediately right now reframe, reword it, right? In other words, if your doctor has told you you have high blood pressure, you can at least, right, mini practice, at least say, I'm currently experiencing the symptoms of high blood pressure. If you've been labeled diabetes, I'm currently experiencing the symptoms of diabetes. If you have arthritis, I'm currently experiencing the symptoms of arthritis. You can apply this to any diagnosis, right? So that is at least one step away from you have, which literally embeds that in you. At the end of this session, I'm hoping you realize, let's go all the way the other way. You will now frame it as, oh, it's from these choices, these behavior, and these things. All right? So to get you there, I'm going to give you the framework. There are 5 things on how we can find the root cause of symptoms, right? And those 5 are the mind, the mechanical body, how we move, the biological body, which is the chemical body, that's 3. There's the environment, right, which is what's around you. And lastly, there's the energy, right? Energy just has to do with frequency and vibrations, right? So I'm going to walk through all of these 5 elements as it relates to your immunity, specifically because immunity is very important right now, given what's happening in the world. Anything that you can do to optimize your immunity directly will minimize your chance of being seriously ill, given what's going on. Okay, so let's apply this to immunity. The first one we'll go through is, let's just pick one. Let's pick the environment since we talked about the context, right? So what's around you directly affects your health, of course, right? I'll exaggerate so you can kind of conceptualize this. Let's say you do everything that you can to be healthy, but you live next to a nuclear plant that's leaking, you're not going to be healthy, right? So I live in New Jersey. There's literally maps that you can pull up online because it shows certain neighborhoods are built on what are called Superfund sites. It just means they're basically built on garbage, right? And if you look at the stats, just in New Jersey, if you live here, there's a 33% higher chance incidence of breast cancer, right, compared to any other state, right? Because New Jersey actually is filled with a lot of toxins, right? And so in the water that we drink, right, when you plug your zip code in, and you can do this, right, on your own, if you just type in EWG, Edward, William, Gale, EWG.org, and you type in water, they have a database where you can plug in your zip code, and it will tell you basically how toxic your water is. It will show you all the different toxins in your water. So I can tell you, in my area, there are 30 industrial toxins in the water, and 15 of 30 exceed health limits. In other words, there are 15 chemicals that they know are higher than what's allowed that causes cancer, illness, and disease. Right? And so in your environment, the number one recommendation I recommend is to test your water, or at least look it up online, and then take action to filter your water. Now, you might be thinking, hey, it's okay, I drink bottled water. Well, if you look at the studies, bottled water is more toxic than tap water, right? Mainly because the bottled water industry is not regulated. There are certain bottled waters, when it was tested, especially some of the generic ones, had way more chemicals than tap water. And two, even the artisan waters, right, it comes in a plastic bottle, and that plastic chemical gets into the water, and it causes all kinds of cancers and stuff like that, okay? So bottled water is actually more toxic than tap water. Your best source of water is to filter your tap water. Now, you have some options. If you own your own home, you want to get what's called a central line filter. And again, at the end of this, you get access to a course where I show you what to get. So don't worry about the details. I just want you to understand the concept and be motivated to act on it. So if you own your own home, your best bet is to get a central line filter, because it is the best quality water, and every drop of water coming into your house is now filtered, right? And also the expense of that is way less than bottled water, and way less than a second best option, which is the under the sink filter, right? So if you don't own your home, which means you cannot install a central line filter, you're going to want an under the sink filtration system, right? So they're typically $150 to $300, right? And so you get what's called a reverse osmosis one. It's the best one. And so you would put that under the sink. Now that takes care of your drinking water. However, you're still going to bathe and shower in toxic water. And so you're going to want to get a shower head filter to install on your shower head and shower with filtered water, right? Because you're inhaling the steam of those chemicals. It's going in your skin, right? It's still very toxic, right? And so those two things on your water makes a tremendous, profound influence in your health. I'll give you interesting stats. We have tested a bunch of people in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area, and we're finding off the charts levels of rocket fuel in their body. Rocket fuel, right? And what we did for the research, it's because it's in their water system. And these are all my friends who are entrepreneurs, who are very on top of their health. They're, drinking filtered water and all that stuff, but they didn't get a central line filter. They didn't filter it enough, and they were thinking that when they're drinking their bottled water, that was being safe, but yet they're bathing and showering and touching rocket fuel, right? And so very important for you to take care of your water supply, right? That's the number one thing from the environment perspective. Your water supply is huge, okay? So now let's pick one. Let's go to the mechanical body, right? Your mechanical self. So interestingly, 20 years when I first started doing physical therapy and healing people mechanically in my clinic here in New Jersey, 5% of the people at most had tightness in the front of their hips 20 years ago. Now it's 99.999%, right? Exponential increase in the amount of tightness in the front of the hip. Now, when I talk about this, people say, well, it's because people are sitting more. Well, I looked into the research. We're not sitting that much more in the last 20 years, right? Maybe an hour more. An hour more sitting wouldn't account for an exponential 20 plus fold increase in tightness of this. We'll get into why it's tight when we get to the biology, but from a mechanical perspective, what's happening is, especially with phones, especially what's causing this tightness, our bodies are being pulled more and more forward. And every degree that we go forward puts more pressure into our body. More pressure means more work that our muscles have to use on a day-to-day basis for you just to live. More work from your muscles means wasted energy and more pressure in your entire skeletal system. Right? In other words, think of it as most people are walking around now as if there's an 80-pound brick on top of their head every day. You can imagine an 80-pound brick on your head is not going to be pro-health, right? Sort of anti-health. So the mechanical thing that I recommend is doing a stretch to stretch those muscles, right? It's a super simple stretch. It's also known as like the warrior pose in yoga, right? So I'll give you a side view. You stand in a lunge position, you keep the back knee straight, you lunge forward, and you reach up and you arch your back like this, right? And you want to hold that for about 5 deep breaths, and you just turn to the other side and do the same motion. Or you can just switch legs, of course, right? Because you want to switch both sides. And so you want to do that one single stretch throughout the day, right? When you first start doing this, I recommend doing it every 2 to 3 hours. It takes, a minute or two, not even, but you want to do it frequently throughout the day. And the reason is if you stretch a muscle out, if you don't stretch it again in the next 4 hours, it fully retightens. Thus, you want to do it high frequency, right? However, you don't want to do it high intensity. If you lunge forward so hard where you're feeling pain in these areas, it means you're going too hard, right? So you want to back off, keep the stretch intensity medium, but use high frequency to get the benefits of that stretch, right? That will start to restore your mechanical position. It's like taking 80 pounds off of your head. That is incredible, right, for your health. And later on, you'll understand when we get to sort of the mind energy part, what's inside of us controls what's outside of us. And this will be very important later. Hold on to that thought, right? And so far we've covered the environment, we've covered the mechanical self, right? So let's go to the mind, right? So when it comes to the mind, essentially it's how you're perceiving the world, your external circumstances, and the words you're using to communicate within yourself, right? And so when it comes to the mind, I have 2 actionables for you. One is you're going to practice mindfulness practice. And I have a mindfulness practice that is so easy, anyone can do it, okay? And all you do is you take your index finger and you wiggle it 100 times, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you count to 100. What's happening right now is as you're wiggling your finger and you're counting, make sure you count out loud, your mind is not thinking about future or past. It's in the moment, which essentially you're practicing mindfulness, right? And so that takes your brain out of worrying, right, which is future, or depression, anxiety, which is the past, right? And so it takes you in the moment. Super easy. I do not recommend most people who have never practiced any mindfulness to jump right to meditation, right? Because the expectation of meditation is like not thinking and emptying your mind, and people who feel like they can't do that, they give up, they go, I can't meditate. Well, I recommend starting with just wiggling your finger. Now, if after your wiggling finger practice for a month, you now have enough moments for a month throughout the day to practice being in the now, then you can transition to guided meditation, right? Like you listen to an app, someone's talking to you, and you do that for a month or 2. And after that, you can go into what's called traditional meditation, right? Which is you sit, you let your thoughts come and go without judging. The analogy I use that I've read, it's not mine, I'm just borrowing it, is meditation's like watching a mosquito land on you and bite you and leave, but you never scratch the itch, right? So it's like watching and observing your thoughts come, but you never interact with the thoughts, right? That's sort of the end stage practice of this. But in the beginning, start by wiggling your fingers. So that's one actionable practice. And so you might want to do this 3 to 10 times a day. It's up to you. Minimum of 3 up to 10 times a day. I do recommend switching fingers. I actually had a patient who is very, very diligent, very type A, and she used the same index finger every day, and she started to get soreness. She started to get soreness in the index finger. So you might want to switch. Maybe use a toe sometimes. Maybe use a different finger, right? And so that's one actionable. I'll give you the other actionable when it comes to your mind, which essentially is be very aware of the words that you are speaking and thinking, right? And so again, I have an entire course on word use, but in this session, I just want you to be aware of 2 words, right? Super simple 2 words to start your beginning practice. And the 2 words are I get to versus have to, right? So you can imagine if you got up each day and you said, I have to wake up, I have to brush my teeth, I have to get dressed, I have to get in a car, I have to go to the office, I have to go food shopping, I have to, right? What that would feel like. Imagine, right now, take time and imagine, take a deep breath, and imagine a week of that, a month of that, a year of that, versus I get to wake up, I get to brush my teeth, I get to put on my clothes, I get to get in a car, I get to go, so on and so forth. And what that feels like, right? It's a very, very, very different thought process, right? And so one would be, wow, I'm so grateful I get to do all these things, the same things, and one is I have to, as if it's a burden. And so you can imagine just switching have to get completely switches your level of stress and your level of anxiety, right? We're speaking root causes. Because most people who talk about reducing stress, well, the stress comes from some root causes, which is our language use. And again, in the full course, there's a deeper practice of our previous experiences also strongly influence our thinking process, which leads to these stress levels. So if we're just reducing stress, we're still just simply addressing the symptoms. The root causes, the words we use, in our previous experiences and the stories we have assigned to the previous experiences. Again, beyond the scope of this session, but don't worry, you actually get full access to that course as a part of this Pay It Forward. Okay, so that is the mind. Now, let's go to the next section, which is biology, right? So our chemical cells. When it comes to our chemical cells, this is, tying back to why people are so tight here now, right? Well, there's a 20-fold increase. Again, I kind of talked about how toxic we are. What's more importantly, interestingly, is at least in America, glyphosate, also known as Roundup, which is a weed killer, they're spraying on everything. It's in all grains, right? And so as an actionable in America, I would highly recommend greatly limit your intake of any grains, all of them, right? Doesn't matter if it's like wheat or oats or any grains, even if it says organic. I used to give my kids those cute little Auntie Annie's organic bunnies, and then when they were tested, they had tons of Roundup in it, right? Cheerios, there's more Roundup than vitamin A in Cheerios. And so pasta or Roundup, right? And so if it has any grains, if it's grown, especially in America, forget genetically modified and all that stuff. That has its own unfortunate effects, but the Roundup is huge, right? And so if you're going to eat any grains, I would see if you can get like quinoa that's imported. It's grown maybe in South America. That would be my recommendation. Or flour that's imported maybe from Italy would be amazing. I would really try to avoid any grains that's in America. Huge actionable. The reason is when you eat Roundup, it basically causes lots of inflammation in your intestines. In your intestines, when it gets inflamed, here are two interesting effects you may not be aware of. One, when your intestines are inflamed, the bacteria cannot grow on the inflamed area as well. And that bacteria is so important that if we got rid of all the bacteria, we would not live as long. I'll give you some interesting studies. They studied that when a child prior to age 1, right, so from birth to 12 months old, in that time frame, one bout of antibiotics, which kills bacteria, doubles their lifetime risk of diabetes. That's how impactful the bacteria is in our system. So when we eat Roundup, it's constantly inflaming our intestines, causing death in the absolutely necessary bacteria we need to absorb nutrients, to make all kinds of healthy stuff for us to function and be at our best. That's one effect. The other is, when your gut is inflamed, your intestines are designed to keep like undigested food and eventually poop inside it until you let it out. Well, if it's inflamed, the undigested food and the poop leaks out into the rest of your body, right? So now you have these contaminants that are leaking out of your intestines, going throughout your body, and your immune system is freaking out. It's like, oh my God, what's happening, right? So your immune system, remember Pac-Man? It's like Pac-Man going and gobbling up all the little pellets. Well, it's like Pac-Man working overdrive, trying to gobble up all the pellets of these contaminants within our system. Well, if Pac-Man is gobbling up all those things, what is it not doing, right? What is its normal job? Well, it's supposed to be killing cancer cells. It's supposed to be helping you reduce inflammation. It's supposed to be normalizing some of your dead cells. It gets rid of dead cells, because if you have a dead cell that's laying around and it doesn't get removed, the healthy cells around the dead cells start to die as well, right? It's actually one of the mechanisms of aging, right? One of 7. And so when this is happening, right, you have more inflammation, you're aging faster, and your cancer risk does increase, okay? And so very important for you to minimize any grain intake into your system, because when all that's inflamed, inflammation is very sticky. The chemicals of inflammation causes stickiness, and your intestine sits right against the muscles right in the front of your hips. So when those muscles touch inflammation, they get all sticky. Guess what happens? Your body starts to stick and you walk like this eventually, right? That's the biological and mechanical intersection of why this is all, for most people, so tight, right, that I'm seeing, right? So that is the biological aspect of this. Now, to tie in biology, aside from just not eating grains, I call it implementing the core values of food. People always ask me what diet to eat. Well, I say don't eat any diet. A diet is a tool. I want you to make healthy food choices for the rest of your life, right? This comes back to word choice. And so the healthy food choice for the rest of your life is about the relationship with food. Like anything, it's a relationship with the thing, not the thing in itself, right? And so what are the 3 core values of a sound relationship with food? I keep it simple. Eat the rainbow, right? Which is eat colorful foods. Don't eat always green, always white, always blue. You want to eat a variety of colors each week. Within the week, eat a variety of colors. That's 1. 2 is 80-20. If 80% of the time you're eating healthy foods, the other 20%, it's okay, right? Because it's probably not possible to eat 100% healthy all the time. People try to do this. They're called diets. And so no one stays on a diet forever, right? So then people ask me, well, what's a healthy food? Very simple. A healthy food is a food that's never been through a machine. It doesn't have an ingredients list. It didn't come in a box or a bag, right? In other words, it's just like earth, ideally earth to your house. These days, earth to supermarket to your house is maybe your current choice, right? Ideally, earth, like dirt, into your doorstep would be the best. If you could source that, that would be the most incredible. And of course, organic sources. And the last core value is don't judge food as good or bad, right? Any food that you say that is bad for me or bad for you, after you eat it, you feel guilt. And in fact, even shame, somewhere between guilt and shame. And those emotions are more unhealthy for you than the actual biology of the food, right? So this is a great segue into the last reality. The last is energy, right? Because our emotions, right, our feelings affects our energy directly. This is all mapped out, right? So love has a certain vibration frequency, shame has a very low frequency. And so by being mindful of the feelings that we have on a day-to-day basis, we can now optimize our health, right? This is why, from a biology perspective, we don't judge food as bad, because when we eat it, that guilt feeling, that low vibration, promotes more despair, more hopelessness, more illness, more anxiety than any biology, right? Any chemical food, basically. Right? And so being mindful of our emotions. And so if you're thinking, well, what's the actionable? Well, on a moment-to-moment basis, maybe when you're counting, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, tune in to what are you feeling in that moment. It doesn't matter what the feeling is. Most people have learned to tune out their emotions. Just the practice of tuning into the emotion is extremely powerful. It gives you the awareness. Again, there are much deeper practices, and you don't have to worry, you get the full course with the deeper practices, right? In this one, I want you to give you the simple starter practices and to get you to understand why this is so important, right? So tuning in to your emotions is huge, right? Now, that's from a emotional, internal perspective. I'll give you an external perspective as it relates to energy. At night, this is super simple. You want to turn off your Wi-Fi routers, right? Because your Wi-Fi, like all things, is broadcasting, right, a frequency into your environment, and there's studies showing that the Wi-Fi wires are not the most healthy for us, right? So at night, like I have a $12 timer I got from Amazon that says turn off this plug from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I plug the Wi-Fi router, our TV, and all that stuff in it, and then I don't set it and forget it. Never had to think about it. Every night, automatically shuts off. Super simple, actionable, to limit the exposure to these vibrations that we know are not healthy for you, right? So just to review, we have 5 different realities, right? We went through the mind, right? About wiggling your finger, right? About being attentive to your word choice. We went through the mechanical body, which is about doing the warrior stretch. We went through the biological body, which is eliminate grains and adopt the 3 core values of food. We went through the environment, which is simply look up your water information and ideally get some type of water replacement filtration system. And then lastly, we just went over energy, right? So when you put all those 5 things in place, they are now addressing the root causes of why a person is not optimized, right? And I'll explain to you what that means. Again, from the beginning, we talked about we are born optimized, right? Just think, when you look at a baby, you don't go, oh, that's horrible. You go, oh my God, it's amazing. Because the moment we're born, we vibrate at the highest, most amazing love frequency, right? No one looks at a baby like, arms too short, legs could be stronger. We don't judge babies. But yet as we grow, as we go through normal life, we're meant to feel the separation and the judgment, and we're meant to feel the hopelessness, the uncertainty, because that allows us to figure out exactly who we are. Every one of those tough times is a magical breadcrumb for us to reveal exactly who we are meant to be going forward. We just don't see it in that moment. When my wife almost was dying, I wasn't like, this is so magical. I get to realize my life purpose. It wasn't until I looked back, right? When I grew up poor and I'd like pick from trash or stuff, I was like, this is amazing. It wasn't until I looked back. So no matter what uncertainty, no matter what chaos that you're experiencing in life, that you're seeing not only in your own life, in other people's, trust that that is exactly what is meant for you and for them to experience. And so there's one obstacle towards that. If our system, if our brain and our health is so suppressed, right? We have all these chemicals, we're so inflamed, we're so energetically wasted and drained, we don't have the ability to see the magic in these breadcrumbs. This is why this session about restoring not only your immunity but your well-being is about restoring your ability to see the magic in your life. Here's what happens. Not only on the surface, as you restore your immunity and your health, you're going to be like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Guess what happens to those around you? Versus, life is horrible. How do people act and feel around you? How we are on the inside directly influences how people are around us, right? There's a saying, as above, so below. What's within us, how we feel, directly influences the external world around us. And so, remember I said about sometimes we don't realize how powerful and influential we can be? Well, as you act on this session's actionables, and as you take the course I'm going to give you, as you optimize and restore yourself, you're literally casting a pebble in a lake. And the ripple effects of this, you may not yet know, but I guarantee you in months and years to come, you're going to look back and go, oh my God, I cannot believe how much of a difference I was able to make just by revealing, attending, restoring myself, right? Because sometimes we're tricked into thinking we must do external stuff to make a difference, and we sacrifice ourselves for the external. We're not taught, no, we attend to ourself, right? Someone told me a word called self-ing. When we attend to ourself and we restore the self, we literally broadcast this amazingness out into the world, right? That is like the light bulb that's kind of like flickering, trying to help other light bulbs. Well, maybe the light bulb, as you fully brighten your own bulb, all the other bulbs can see much better. That is the vision that I have for you. That is the vision that I wish for you. That is the vision I know is possible as you take action on this, because this is, after all, the Global Hope Summit. And I honor you for being on this session. And I know that as you put this into practice, you can be the greatest light bulb in your house, in your community, or in the world that is up for you to decide.
All right, guys, that was Steve Young, and we went a little long there, but I wanted to make sure we got all that great information. And we're going to jump right from here. We're going to take a quick 1-minute break, and then I'll be back with the final talk of the night with Eric. Awesome, guys. It's been an incredible journey here with you. And this is our last speaker of the Global Hope Summit. And I'm super excited to introduce you all to Eric Lochtefeld. He's an entrepreneur, mentor, investor. He's owned over 20 businesses and counting, including in the event industry, which has been hit particularly hard right now. And so he has a ton of experience managing businesses, and he's recently and over the last few years really dived into helping people also find their bliss, which, as we started out at the beginning of this summit, about finding that aspirational part of you. And it's been incredible journey, and I am very excited to introduce you to Eric Lochtefeld, and I'll let you take it from here, Eric.
Hello, everybody. I love that I'm closing this out today, so thank you for that honor. And I'm truly honored to be here, and thank you, Tim Wolf, and all the organizers of the Global Hope Summit for asking me to present today. So this topic is near and dear. My topic is on the changing event industry and what happens after COVID. I want to start by saying I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have a heck of a lot of experience. I'll talk about that in a moment. But in order to discuss this topic properly, I think it's probably important that everyone listening today know what has actually occurred thus far beyond what you might have read about the event industry. So that way we're all on the same page when thinking critically about the solutions and what may or may not happen in the future. So hopefully that works for you guys. Since the event industry is really quite broad, I'm going to focus on just two specific industries within the greater event industry. And they're both industries that are really, really near and dear to my heart, and that I know a fair amount about because I own businesses in each of them currently. They are the live music events industry and the personal development event industry. So just to quantify myself, because I think you should always know who you're hearing from and who you're learning from, I'm a longtime owner of the very first live performance theater ever built in California. And on a personal development business, I'm the proud owner of Bliss Champions. And I've produced over 1,000 events in my career. I lost track a long time ago. I've employed over 1,000 people for sure along the way. I've written about $25 million worth of checks to artists in genres from music to comedy to performing arts, you name it, to play in my venues. And I've been in and out of putting on personal development events for really a few decades, having generated over $100 million in sales within the personal development industry, exclusively with events over my lifetime. So that's my experience, but now for my thoughts. So let's talk about the retreat industry first, because I think that one is a little bit rosier at the moment. So before COVID struck, the self-improvement industry was a $9.9 billion global industry with expectations to reach $13.2 billion by 2022. The lion's share of the revenue was being generated by live events. Everything from massive Tony Robbins events in arenas to large conferences in Las Vegas, to seminars in hotels virtually around the world, to local gatherings, to exotic destination retreats. The world was really booming with personal development events. And who wouldn't want to do them? They're fun. You get to be around people. You get to travel. You get to personally grow. Then COVID struck, and pretty much all live events in this industry were postponed. Notice I said postponed, not canceled. And why am I making this distinction? Because if you are an event producer with ticket revenue in hand for an event that was supposed to occur after COVID struck, it is unearned revenue till you deliver your event. That means it's sitting on your balance sheet as unearned revenue. And the only way you can convert those ticket sales to revenue is to deliver the event your customer paid for someday in the future, or get the customer to agree to exchange it for another product, perhaps a virtual product. So if you cannot do either and your event is actually canceled, then you have to give the money back. Problem is, you probably use that ticketing revenue for a future event to survive and pay for expenses when the revenue faucet got turned off. So my best guess, guys, and I'm totally guessing here, is that there's probably $1 billion with a B in unearned revenue sitting on balance sheets without the actual money to back it up anymore. That's a really big problem for the events industry. Fans are going to be super pissed off that their hard-earned money is going to be gone when things start up again. So I want to be clear that that's happened. And how much of this is the case in the personal development industry is anybody's guess. I know for sure I was supposed to go to a Tony Robbins event in San Jose. I think it was end of March or early April. That was in an arena. 12,000 people paid a few grand for those tickets. And those salespeople do not stop calling me. And their sole agenda on this earth is to get me to say yes to converting my live tickets that I bought for several $1,000s to one of their virtual events. Why? Because they're trying to take that revenue as unearned and get it to be earned. It's very, very smart, but not everyone in the event industry has that capability. So I just want to make sure, since we're not only talking about big picture things, let's kind of drill down and take a look at the personal development company I own. So we're not just talking about what we think is happening, and somebody can profile you exactly what's happening. When 2020 started, my company, Bliss Champions, in the personal development space, had approximately 50 customers that were both monthly subscribers to a mastermind that actually took place virtually, but also included a spot in a retreat that was supposed to happen in 2020. By the end of April, only 3 customers had dropped out of my mastermind due to financial concerns brought on by the pandemic. By the end of May, though, another 2 people had dropped out, meaning we had lost 10% of our 2020 customers in less than 60 days. You know, those were hard fought for customers in 2019, but not bad in the scheme of things, actually. And I'm sure many more personal development companies had a much worse fate than that. So our retreats, on the other hand, had a whole different experience. Of our 50 customers that were supposed to attend up to 6 retreats, they got to choose from these 6 different locations, right? We ended up giving customers the option to opt out of a retreat due to COVID or just being afraid to travel or not being able to travel. But they could stay in the program if they wanted to, the mastermind virtual portion, or they could stay in and do the retreat as planned. Very few business owners would share this kind of information, but I'm just going to let it rip. Only 12 of the 50 ended up doing a retreat. 76% of my customers did not. And that's not because we don't run world-class retreats. We do. And that's not because we didn't make it as safe as possible for people to travel. This means that we had to reduce our number of retreats from 6 to 2. We hosted a retreat in Cabo in August because Cabo's open, has been since July, and one here in the United States this month. So big, big difference to our business. And I've had a lot of contacts in the retreat industry, and I can tell you right now that barely any of them have pulled off any retreats. So the fact that we even pulled off 2 and got everybody home safely and nobody picking up any illness at all is a minor miracle. But the primary reason we did not lose more was that we delivered the lion's share of our coaching online via Zoom, and we've been doing it now for really 2 years. So we were in a lucky position that we made that transfer 2 years ago. And of course, when the pandemic struck, the rest of the personal development industry and the entire education industry, what did they do? They ran to Zoom, right? So overnight, everyone got familiar with that platform and other platforms like it. So I feel like it was a rather easy shift for really most life coaches and personal development events to shift online. Even Tony Robbins, who really relies on that big audience, he did the shift, I think, pretty seamlessly and pretty darn well. Because in the end, personal development is really about teaching and transformation, and virtual platforms can handle this quite well. So now I'm getting into the hope aspect. And I do think one of the biggest trends going into 2021 will be the industry combining in-person and virtual events. I had a lot of my customers that said, hey, look, I'm too fearful to travel, but hey, can you tape the speeches and the activities? And we weren't really set up for that. So the answer was no. I didn't want to give a crappy product of holding up an iPhone, nor did I want to add another person to the travel situation to come down and film it properly. But I do think in 2021, events that are live, that can combine in-person and virtual so that you can choose based on your comfort level is really going to be the next big thing. And then people are going to find that they like that. I don't want to go to that hotel in Vegas every year and sit in that lame conference room for 9 hours and then have to get plastered at some Vegas casino bar afterwards. So that might be here to stay, is a prediction I'm throwing out. I don't think we're ever going to get rid of live events because too many people prefer that, and they do love the experience of travel and doing these things. But to accommodate those that prefer to network in person as well as those that may not be ready to travel just yet, I think that's probably the key. Now, if you have put on an event this year like I have, I can tell you right now, we're definitely going to see a trend of producing new health protocols. That's just a fact. So I know for our retreats the past 2 months, we went as far as to acquire COVID tests from China that give a result in 15 minutes. You heard me right, 15 minutes. Nothing shoved up your nose and taking a week to get the info back to you. And they only cost $35 per test. And I know some of you are going to be like trying to email me now, asking me where I got these things, but you got to buy them in boxes of 40. They're $35 a test. Might be unaffordable for some events, but eventually those tests are going to come down in price to around $5. And eventually our government is going to make you aware of them because they do exist in other countries right now. We administered the test to everyone at our event so that we could create a bubble situation, both for our food servers, our bartenders, and our customers and staff alike. And I'll tell you, it was a game changer for sure. So expect protocols to come in. United Airlines just announced that they're going to be doing tests at the airport now. If you haven't heard about that, $250 before you get on their plane. I just think that needs to come down to around $5 and be instant in order for it to work. Kind of like a diabetes pinprick test. So excuse me, creating healthy bubbles is a great way to go for events. We see the NBA doing this right now for the playoffs at Disney World in Orlando. But after a while, it won't just be the uber wealthy events doing this. NBA, bottomless pockets, average event person putting on a small event a little bit more tougher. But I do think it will get to a point where we all have access to that far before a vaccine potentially comes out. So I'm thinking maybe by Christmas, we start seeing low-cost tests that event owners are starting to advertise as, hey, we've got these. We might even mail them to you in the mail before you leave. I know I sent N95 masks to all my customers in the first month, gave them a box of 10 each just because I cared about my customers. And then also to plant that seed that, look, we need to start thinking about this way since we have events coming up later in the year. There will also have to be changes in contractual terms. So that's going to be another thing that you might not even notice, but you might want to start reading the fine print on things that you buy, especially if you're going to buy a cruise experience or something on a cruise ship. Losses were in the billions, and event owners and ticket buyers both quickly realized that they should have paid way more attention to their contract terms, the terms and conditions, the fine print. And ingenuity is another area that's going to be a must. If we are to continue to provide spacing and health protocols, we need to really look at how we meet creatively, right? Especially if the whole 6 feet thing is going to stay in place. We can pull that off, but the event industry is going to have to get really, really creative. So those are kind of the big trends that I'm predicting for the next year. And some of them may become preferable, like events that you can both not go to yet see virtually. I also noticed during this pandemic that really millions of people woke to the understanding that life is precious and we only have one. So people have realized that they need to live it and don't want to waste their time on this earth that's left. And this all bodes well for personal development. So I'm pretty bullish on personal development overall. The event producers that really won't fare as well are the ones that were really focused on connection only and not transformation. You know what I'm talking about? These were the big party events that you would go, and sure, you'd see a speaker or two on stage, but then you'd party your brains out till 4 a.m. and then get up at 6 a.m. and do rock and roll yoga and do it all over again. And by halfway through the day, they're hosting conferences on microdosing. So I'm not blaming any of that. That stuff was a lot of fun, but that can't transfer virtually. And it sure as hell isn't going to be as fun watching it virtually. So those events are really going to have to change a lot because they're more like the concert industry, which I'm going to touch on next. And it's much harder to convert that atmosphere to online. So all in all, I have a lot of faith that the personal development industry will survive and continue to thrive. And I do mean events, both live and virtual. So I'm bullish on that. I'd bet all day on that industry is going to be just fine. We're going to need it more than ever after this whole COVID experience. Now, to contrast that, moving on to the live music event industry. I've been in and out of it for 25 years. I helped start the Vans Warped Tour when I was just a kid, 25 years old. I now own the Golden State Theater in Monterey, California. It's a 1,000-seat live entertainment venue. Before COVID hit, I was hosting about 75 live concerts, both music and comedy, per year, and doing just over $2 million in annual revenue. Before 2017, I owned the Fox Theater in Silicon Valley. I was doing $5 million a year and 120 events a year. So that was my pace for nearly a decade. So I hope you do feel I know a little bit of what I'm talking about here. My Golden State Theater property also has a total of 8 retail tenants, and you name it, like a hairdresser, a sushi restaurant, a wine and cheese bar, like several different types of things. And we take up most of a city block in a bustling downtown. Monterey is a pretty big tourist destination because of the Monterey Bay Aquarium. So many would say that we are kind of the heartbeat of our downtown and a driving economic engine for the restaurants and coffee houses on our street. So I can tell you on Friday, I can't remember the exact date, but I think it was like March 19th, whatever that Friday was around that time. I showed up to work to a sold out concert at my theater. And just like I had done hundreds of times, I was ready to put on a good rock show. Only this time, there had been sporadic news reports about a possible virus. Think how naive I sound right now, right? A possible virus making its way to the American shores from China. And that the gathering of people might not be such a good idea. Think how funny that is to say it that way now. So call me an early adopter, because a few days before this sold out show, I got a little spooked by an article I read in this context. And I actually bought a box of latex gloves at the supermarket, at Safeway. And I also ordered protective eyewear from Amazon because I'm thinking, oh, shaking hands, touching stuff, and then people's saliva, whatever, floating through the air and going through your eyeballs, right? So, we just had Steve Young on. He could probably have done a much better job describing that way of contacting stuff. But I've gotten sick enough over the years from patrons shaking my hand and then sneezing in their hands, and I ask them what's wrong, and they go, "Oh, I got the flu." So most of my illness comes from shaking hands. I wish it were banned forever. So I thought, I'll be prepared. I'll have some protective gear at my sold out concert. And trying my best to be a good boss, I attempted to pass the gear out, the protective eyewear, to my bartenders and security guards and my wife, who's my partner in the theater, and our staff in the box office. And with the exception of my wife, who I got to read the same article I read, every staff member, especially the bartenders, really gave me the same exact look and said, thanks, boss. You're so cool for caring about us. Kind of side laugh, but I'm good, right? And then I would walk away and I'd hear them laughing as I walked away, right? In a huddle. Look how ridiculous he looks in those clear glasses. So my wife and I were literally the only people in the entire theater, 1,000 seat sold out theater that night, to wear protective gear. And we didn't even know about masks yet. That wasn't even a thing. So at least in America. So while working the show, I noticed two really interesting things that were abnormal. One, I like to kind of move around in my lobby and on the street under the marquee. I make my way in the box office just to make sure things are going right. So I noticed that there was a large number of kind of well-off patrons standing outside under my marquee on the street curb, scalping tickets. So we're a pretty affluent area, and my venue's not the kind of venue that you have scalpers. So I went up and just started to chat up, not that it's illegal or anything. And I just said, hey, what gives? And they all said the same exact thing. And there was maybe 15 of them, okay? So these are wealthy people that have tickets to the show, but are on the curb starting to miss the show because they want to sell their $75 tickets. They said that they had invited friends to the show and that their friends called last minute to say that they were not coming because of the news reports about this possible virus thing, okay? And this is where it's going to get wild for you guys to hear. The second thing that I noticed after we shut the box office down about an hour into the show was that there was a huge stack of envelopes with tickets in the will call box that hadn't been picked up yet. Now that's unusual. Usually you have maybe 5 envelopes. I counted them. There were 57 envelopes, with each envelope containing at least 2 tickets or more, sometimes as many as 8. So this was a $75 show. So do the math. Out of curiosity, I counted up. I opened all the envelopes and I counted the uncollected tickets. The number came to just over 200. We're a 1,000-seat venue, folks. This was a sold-out show. That meant that over 20% of the people for the show bailed on their paid-for tickets. Now, you might say now, of course, but think about mid-March. We didn't really know what was going on, right? And people love their money. They don't want to just walk away from it. And this is unheard of in my industry, maybe 2 to 5%, but over 20%. So I remember thinking at that moment, from those 2 combined experiences, that this virus thing had the potential to crush the entire concert industry. 2 nights later, Sunday night, weekend's not even over, more news comes out. We have another sold out concert. Only this time, less than half our seats were filled. Only approximately 500 people showed up. So at this point, I'm telling my wife, our industry's in trouble. What about the shows we just put on sale for April and May and June? So by Tuesday morning, the largest promoters in the country, keep in mind, guys, this is the span of 5 days. The largest promoters in the country, Live Nation and AEG, billion-dollar conglomerates, convened, and they announced that they were suspending all of their tours, wait for this laugh, through the end of March and for all of April. And I remember laughing at the time thinking, are they being a little bit optimistic? Because what I'm reading doesn't really work for, 40 days from now, opening up. So I even got into a really heated argument with our longtime booking agent telling them that, bro, we need to cancel our shows. I'm not sending deposits to these artists because these ain't going to happen. I don't see anything happen until November. And we got into this huge argument. And then he went on to tell me that executives at the two biggest concert promotion companies in the world had way more data than me, probably had access to the president, and at the end of the day, would know way better what was going to go on in the industry than I would, this little single promoter from, Monterey, or individual promoters. So I told my wife that day that they're dead wrong. And sure enough, by the end of the week, so guys, Friday night when we all started being aware, my own experiences were private. I know I was the only one in my friend group talking about it on Facebook. By Tuesday, the two biggest promoters in the world cancel all their end of March and April tours. By Friday, the entire industry shut down. Shut down, meaning that engine, that wheel, came to a complete abrupt stop. So what happens when an entire industry shuts down overnight and stays shut down for 6+ months till today and counting? So to assess the concert industry's ability to recover, which is what you guys are asking me to talk about, and deliver live music again, we need to understand who the players are. And I'm not talking about music lovers, maybe you guys, who can get music in a multitude of ways while this wait occurs. Spotify, Pandora, I don't know, hell, maybe MTV videos will come back. You can get it in a lot of ways, but not live. And I'm talking about the business and the employees who support the live music industry. So I will kind of list them in the order of maybe the food chain and how it works. So this is our industry. Number 1, artists. Number 2, promoters like Live Nation and AEG. Number 3, venues. People that own venues like me, and that includes arenas, theaters, halls, performing arts centers, outdoor venues, even fairgrounds. Number 4, music industry professionals, lawyers, accountants, publicists, agents, artist management, agents, the booking industry. Number 5, live music production companies, lighting companies, sound companies, video companies, trucking companies for tours, tour buses, those companies, stagehands everywhere. Number 6, supporting companies, ticket system providers. There's over 100 of those, believe it or not, in America. Makers of ticket stock, wristbands, lanyards, and scanner companies, security guard companies everywhere, even EMTs, concession companies that sell water, popcorn, hot dogs, nacho vent to people like me that then serve it to our customers. The alcohol beverage distribution companies. How do you think we get our beer and our hard alcohol to serve to our patrons? How about the non-alcohol? Our number 1 selling product is water. Janitorial companies, bathroom material vendors. You get the idea. It isn't just about whether the fan gets to listen to music again. That's our industry. So the global music industry did $53.77 billion in 2018 and was projected to hit $65 billion by 2023. So growing at a similar curve to personal development. Over half of that number occurs in the good old USA, $35 billion. We love our live music. And this massive engine completely grinded to a halt in late March and has been completely shut down for 6 months and counting. Right? Not like restaurants that came back and could serve maybe outside or on pickup basis. Completely shut down. So what do you think has happened to all these companies whose livelihood came from working in this live music industry? It's really hard to answer this because only a few articles get written about the industry overall. When will the music play again? It's really from a fan's perspective. And mostly they just speak, to when live concerts will be able to happen again. But let's just take a look at my situation, as we know that what I'm about to share is 100% accurate because it's coming from the horse's mouth. Okay. I own a concert venue and I owned a concert promotion company. Okay. So the theater was my real estate asset. The concert promotion company was in its 9th year of success before COVID. So let's talk about that one first. Despite doing over $25 million in ticket sales, selling concert tickets for 9 years and being profitable pretty much every year, my concert promotion company was out of business within 45 days. 45 days, guys. And I'm an experienced entrepreneur. 45 days. My ownership of the theater fared a little better, as it's still in business for now, because it received 3 acts of mercy by the banking industry and the government, or it would have met the same fate. We got 3 lifelines through a mortgage cancellation for 6 months by our CDC SBA lender. Thank God my mortgage was with the federal government. Many venues weren't. A matching mortgage reprieve by our other lender, interesting enough, a Chinese bank. And finally, a $150,000 loan at 3% interest from the government from one of their lending programs that they rolled out to everybody. So that all happened in the span of those same 45 days, right? And why this company is alive. And it enabled me to actually pivot. And I have 8 other retail tenants, and I was able to give all of them a 6-month rent reprieve as well. Now that started April 1st. Can anybody do good math here? So when is my reprieve over? November 1st. So over a dozen vendors that provided services to my theater were told that we were shut down till November at the soonest. This is me, March, trying to predict when the music was going to start again. Naive. This included a small security company, our alcohol and concession providers, our sound engineers, our lighting engineers, our production managers, our janitorial staff, ticket takers, box office staff, and stagehands. All had to find new work in a different industry during a global pandemic recession. I did make the decision to keep 2 of my full-time employees on full salary, but more out of mercy than a good business decision. One had just donated half his kidney to save his mom's life, so he was really susceptible to COVID. And the other one is a mom, and she, this is her sole source of income to provide for her baby girl. I just couldn't do it. The business side of me said, cut. But the human side of me said, I can't make that call. I just can't. So I charted a course to at least survive till November 1st. And I've been on that course. So that means I tied off the leaky faucet as much as I could. While some of my tenants may start paying me rent as the landlord of the greater property on November 1st, my theater promoters won't, because they just can't operate. So it costs put this in perspective, because I'm just one venue. It costs $35,000 per month to carry my theater property, paying mortgages and other expenses, keeping the water on, PG&E, all that kind of stuff. If the theater can't open November 1st, and it cannot, I know it cannot, I start eating a large percentage of this amount monthly. And don't worry about me. I'm fine. I have many other businesses and many sources of income, but let's just pretend I don't. And this is my sole business, which most venue owners just have one venue. What do I do? That's the $1 million question. Okay, what do I do? And this is for just one little music venue in Monterey that holds 1,000 seats. How many music venues are in the world? There are so many, I couldn't get an answer to this question. I went on Google and I tried. They actually list by country all the venues in the world, but there were so many I couldn't even count. So we're talking tens of thousands. So likely most of them are already done. Their doors are closed and they're not coming back. Or they're in even, I don't know how else to say it, guys. So I know that doesn't sound really hopeful, but I'm talking about the current owners not coming back. Fortunately, the real estate should stay, because most of these old places are really protected under historical codes and things like that. So this presentation is not about me, and it's not, it's supposed to be about hope. So let's kind of move away from what has happened. But I did want you guys to have a real firsthand experience. No bullshit. I didn't hold anything back here. You know what's going on. So where does my hope lie? Well, we've been here before in a strange way. So back in the late 1990s, some private equity money came into the concert industry, and they had the genius idea to roll up the industry. What I mean by that is, on the promotion side, there were individual promoters in just about every city in America. And think of Bill Graham. Bill Graham Presents owned the San Francisco Bay Area. And this company came in with all their money, and they bought out all the individual promoters, including the legendary Bill Graham. And they all sold. I think they had many names. I think it was SFX Entertainment. Well, that company went on to become Live Nation. the biggest global, the biggest concert promoter in the world, multi-billion-dollar company. They went on to buy Ticketmaster along the way. And so it was a complete roll-up of the industry, and it took the power away from the agents and gave the power to a solitary promoter. Is it a monopoly? Hell yeah, it's a monopoly. But they never got dinged for it. And AEG did come along, and they're competing. But in the end, I don't even know if those two companies will survive this. But money will come in, and this will be what happens. Private equity and venture capital money will start at new ventures that recruit the top talent from the industry and hire them to identify everything worth buying, including, I hate to say it this way, people, to gobble up everything for pennies on the dollar and to begin the industry anew. This probably won't occur till the latter half of 2021 unless there's huge breakthroughs with the vaccine. And I think it'll happen once there's a combination of low-cost COVID self-administered tests and a vaccine that enough people are taking in wide circulation. So will live music come back? Yes, but it will be under new ownership. And unfortunately, a hell of a lot of awesome entrepreneurs will have to leave the life of being an entrepreneur and become employees for global conglomerates or promotions companies. I will not be one of those individuals. I will not be returning to the concert industry. I will be selling my venue if I can find somebody that wants to buy a concert venue at this stage, and will be stepping out forever. And so a lot of people have already been forced out. For me, it's a choice. But that's what I think is going to happen. So I hope I gave two contrasting looks. I'm bullish on personal development. I think it's going to do well. The music industry, we're not restarting till there's either low price test or a vaccine. So that's it, Tim. I hope, I know that second one wasn't very hopeful, but hopefully the first one was.
Yeah. So, I know you've owned so many businesses and in different areas and arenas, beyond just the event industry, for like for the entrepreneurs and people out there who are just trying to be creative, or they're artists. Like, what should they focus on right now in order to create the best possibility of a great future for themselves?
Yeah, I think two things: survival. So we all need to survive, right? And the second thing that I would focus on if I was an artist is this is a gift of time to get better at your craft. So I would literally be spending all my time on my craft. I would not be trying to work 14-hour days to try to monetize my craft right now. Some can pull that off, but I would just take this as a gift of time to get better, because I believe that the universe rewards people based on their level of expertise. So if you're, say, on a scale of 1 to 10, even Beyonce might only be a 7 as a singer, because I'm sure she'd be the first to admit she's not the best singer on the planet. She might be one of the best performers on the planet, but if she could get from a 7 to an 8.5 as a singer, this would be a good time to do that, so that she can come back with a vengeance. So I actually think everybody should be working on improving their craft. And that's what I meant earlier, where that's been one of the unexpected gifts of COVID, is that people are doing that, right? I mean, look at you right now. You're hosting this global summit. You're improving your craft as a host and as a personal development thought leader.
Yeah. Awesome. I know you mentioned Bliss Champions. Where can people find out more about that? And you want to tell a little bit about that program?
Yeah, blisschampions.com. And then my other company is blissislandretreats.com. Or if you're a retreat operator, just go to blissisland.com. But ultimately, I'm doubling down. I'm going with small retreats. Bliss Champions is going to be one of many retreat companies out there. We run virtual masterminds for 6 months that occur on Zoom. And then you get to come to a retreat at the end of that. So our retreats next year are scheduled for June and December. So sometimes it's nice to hear from a fellow retreat person, those are my bets, right? Yeah. But we just don't know. We're taking applications right now for the next 60 days or so. And we'll be signing people up and starting in January. We're going to have 2 sessions. They're going to be 6 months. So the second session will begin in July and end in December. Bliss Island is a new acquisition by me. It's a retreat center in Hawaii on the Big Island. We have no neighbors and we're in a cove, so it really feels like we're on our own island. And I'm specifically reaching out to people that want to put retreats on, that I'm willing to partner up as a retreat expert and help people actually take their craft from virtual to something that's actually live, but in a small way. We only have 8 bedrooms at the hotel. And it's a beautiful property that we just ran a retreat on recently. It's a fantastic place to host small retreats. So I'm betting on small and getting away from big events, large scale events. That's why I don't want to be a concert promoter anymore. But small events, like you'll always be able to find 8 people that will, even in the worst of pandemics, will get on a plane. You know, you have to assess that for yourself, whether that's worth the risk.
Right.
But those people do exist.
Awesome. And
and hey, can I give one sign of hope? Like, I hope you're hearing me and not looking at a guy and going, oh man, he's so risky. I don't do risky. I am a risk taker though, and have been my whole entrepreneurial life. So I'm going to say something that might actually, cause you to judge me, but I'm going to take the risk, and I'm going to say it here for the first time. I've taken 16 commercial flights in the last 90 days. I'm healthy. I'm not sick. Nothing happened to me, and nothing happened to those that traveled with me. Now, I'm just going to end there because I'm not going to add any opinions to that, and I'm not going to try to pressure anybody to do the same. I wouldn't do that. I just want you to hear the message of hope there. 16 commercial flights in 90 days. Okay. So there is hope that our industry can recover, that we can travel again. You still have to be smart. And hell yes, I was wearing my gloves, my glasses, and my mask, just like I did in March at a concert when everyone thought I was crazy. Yeah. So I just want that message of hope to be out there. And I moved 17 people through one retreat and about a dozen through another. Got everybody home safe. We've now been past 14 days. Nobody got sick.
Wow. That's awesome, man. Well, I just want to finally wrap this up and saying I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your experience and your wisdom. And I know that, all the work you're doing now and like the transformational work that you're, continuing to move more and more into and supporting transformation of people across the world, honestly. And I'm excited to, I know I've been a part of that, and it's been a pleasure to get to know you better through this process. And I really appreciate you coming on here and providing your perspective. So.
Yeah, thank you. It's my whole life is about helping people find their purpose and to align with that, and then go on bliss journeys, or if you think of it as a dream pursuit. That's what I'm about. That's what my companies are about. That's what I see you doing right now, Tim. So it's fun to be the last speaker, because I remember the day when you're like, I think I'm going to do a Global Hope Summit, and here we are just a few months later, and congratulations to you, man. You just got 3 killer days in. You probably learned a ton. You probably need a nice break for a week, but you earned it, buddy. So congratulations for showing up during a global pandemic and growing anyways.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, with that, guys, we're going to wrap this part up. Scott and I and another surprise guest will be on shortly to wrap up the event. So thank you so much, Eric.
All right, bye.
All right, guys. So, wow, we've had a incredible 3 days here, and I know it's just been amazing hearing all these various different perspectives. And if you think back to when we started, we started by talking about making this and uh, not just the new normal, but a more frequent extraordinary with Frank McKinney. And as we followed this whole path over these few days, we've really, like, what I've come to just sort of feel like this summit embodies is this idea that it's up to you. It's up to you to go out to pursue your passions, to be willing to have the tough conversations, to go outside of the box of your own beliefs and try to understand other people, to build like this life of purpose and passion and hope. And like through all this, there's been so many great threads, so many different opportunities. And if you didn't get to catch them all, I just want to let you guys know that we are going to be re-releasing all these recordings to the public, so you'll be able to do that or go back. Or like I know Matt's thing today was a little short, and that's actually normally like an hour-long process for him that he tried to cut into 30 minutes. So there's you can take that and reuse the tapping that we did, reuse the meditation we did, all these activities, re-listen to the speakers, go back and get really clear on the different pieces that fit your specific mission, your specific purpose, that thing that you're meant to do. And I think the biggest thing out of all this is to identify those things that are really calling to you and be willing to get out there and put in an effort to make an impact. And at the end of the day, that is the hope. That is the hope of what we are trying to each create in this world. And that's the hope that I have for all of you to go out and make these incredible journeys, these incredible forays and explorations into the future. And all of, like, there is no more important time than now. There's never been a better time than now for you to do that. We've got 6 months where we've been in this place of self-discovery, this time out, like was talked about a few times. And it's just absolutely incredible where we are and the opportunities in front of us. And guys, over the next 7 years, like, the world as we know it is going to completely shift and change. I mean, over the next year it is. And I think honestly, we're going to look back on this time and be like, oh man, you remember that time we were all in quarantine and and we had so much fun. We could only talk through the internet, and we had so much crazy fun but it's just I think when we look back, when we look on today and all the lessons that we learned through this time, they're going to be the most profound lessons that a lot of us have learned our entire lives. And so I want to encourage you to take that perspective, to look, with hope on everything that is going on now, and look towards the future and be willing to move into that better future. And as a part of this, Dave actually couldn't make it, but I want to give him a quick thank you. And I mean, he was such a great teammate for this. He got to come on and also, make it a little fun for everybody with the music. And he's always just a very fun soul that I really want to appreciate him for all the part he did. Jesse also was like very heavily involved. You guys saw his interview with the ALS Car Go project that he's working on with his dad. Those two guys on the copy side, on the content side, really poured their heart and soul into like what you guys saw a lot of in this event. And was also one of my company's designers, Jay-Z, who did a ton of work for all of this. And Scott, you see here, amazing guy, had an amazing talk. And he really was there. He was there for the spark of inspiration. And he's a guy who always believed in this mission and everything that we're really trying to create here. So I want to give a big shout out to you, Scott. And then finally, last but absolutely not least, our friend Laura, which most of you, probably have never seen here. And we're going to get her to jump in on the screen here. And Laura has been behind the scenes this entire summit, hitting the right transition buttons, making sure that we're all taken care of, that this amazing event went off without every single speaker who got on, every single transition that happened, every single video that went up. Like, she has been absolutely instrumental in making not only what you guys see here today, but in helping us operate and run this thing from the very beginning. And even helping me get my crazy ideas for this thing down on paper so that everyone else could understand what the hell I was talking about. But anyway, I just want to give you both an opportunity to speak and tell everybody what you found most powerful and impactful about this event.
Scott, how about I let you wrap this up at the end? Because I'm sure your words are going to be more impactful than mine. All right, cool. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. So I'm going to be reading from my phone here because by no means am I a public speaker yet. As I'm taking this time to reflect on this amazing weekend, I want to thank each of you shining stars, for tuning in and allowing your vessels to amplify the unique energetic signature of the Global Hope Summit. I want to take a moment to appreciate the GHS speakers for sharing their deeply moving stories, providing a clear window into their life's work, and ultimately showing all of us that anyone can make a difference. I want to thank the team for uniting around this cause and contributing to the stunning and powerful platform, like lovingly wrapping a gift and tying it up in a pretty little bow. Most of all, I want to express gratitude for Tim, who's not only become a close friend of mine in the past few months, but more importantly, who's acted as a powerful channel of humanity's highest good. I really believe that. He worked tirelessly to share this inspiration with the world. What feels like a long time ago, Tim asked me to pull a few cards for him. We didn't know exactly what to make of the Three of Cups, the star, in the world. I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd stumbled upon something that we intuitively knew was a potential reality of people coming together in a hope that could raise the collective frequency of the planet. Little did we know that it was a cryptic foreshadowing of this summit, which was actualized just a few short and chaotic months later. Fitting imagery and an equally fitting development and birth of this project, an effort to glean meaning and direction in what feels like a world spiraling out of control, and an effort to unite just a few of our luminaries who are working to shine a light during these dark and trying times. I'm honored and humbled to have been invited to contribute my own gifts to this project and to have worked alongside these brilliant minds and to have witnessed the explosion of hope from spark to supernova. Thank you.
Powerful, powerful. Thank you, Laura. It's it's am I on? Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're on.
All right, cool. Yeah, Laura, this thing has, I don't know, it's I know it's been a lot of effort for you and Tim, but for those of us that got to speak, that got to kind of, watch it, it was effortlessly. It was just smooth. And so kudos to both of you for making this weekend just an amazing weekend. And I was thinking today as we're wrapping up, and the last speaker, someone said, "What was your favorite talk or moment of the weekend, you can't do that. I mean, everybody brought so much to the table. I mean, it was a 72-hour mastermind. 3 days of some brilliant people sharing their hearts and sharing their ideas and encouraging us as we move forward beyond today through the pandemic and through all the other stuff that we're all experiencing, and trying to wrap our minds around, Tim, I just go back to the call you and Dave and I had, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. And just so we kept talking, and all of a sudden Hope came out. Then the word global came out. And we're like, yeah, let's do something global, man. Let's do something. And we've done it. That's crazy. That's crazy. And I just want to say to anybody that's listening or has it this weekend, what has happened this week has been extraordinary, but you can also do that.
Yeah.
And that's the deal. Anybody. I struggle sometimes receiving compliments for, the work I do in Haiti and other things. I'm like, anybody can do it. I started feeding a couple kids, and it's grown from there. I never saw that. I never envisioned that. I'm just like, what could I do today? So that's what I did. And for these speakers, all of them, again, have been so amazing and so diverse. And I've learned so, so much. And I'm so grateful that us spitballing several months ago turned into this amazing weekend. And so, I mean, everybody can do something, man. I mean, everybody can do something. And so, again, I'm really speechless. I'm a little sad that this is wrapped up. I think our plan is, let's do it. We're going to do it again and then again and again. It will grow and it will grow and it will grow.
2021.
Yeah, man. And the impact will continue to expand, and so we could go so this was the spark. This weekend was the spark that started this global hope movement. How exciting is that?
Yeah, the word that I'm really just really came up for me as you were saying that, Scott, is Genesis. You know, like this for hopefully for the attendees, certainly for me and for other people involved in this project, has been a Genesis point. And I for certain, I don't mean to, I'll let you keep talking, Scott, but I just want to it feels like I've been talking all weekend, so, but anyway, it's, it just feels like a Genesis point for so much. And I hope that ripples out for everybody.
Yeah, man. I would like to think if the internet had, on this date markers or these little plaques or whatever, that was on this weekend in 2020 in the midst of a worldwide crisis that none of us had ever experienced. Hope began. And then it just rippled, as Yannick says, and rippled and rippled and rippled and rippled. So exciting, man. So exciting. So thrilled to have been a part of this. And I'm overwhelmed with gratitude. I'm overwhelmed with hope. It's going to take a while to process, I'll be honest with you. It's going to take a while to just kind of, breathe deeply and go okay, so you heard A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So what now? Well, you know what? I'll do what I can do. Yeah. And a couple days later, I'll do something else, hopefully. So, yeah, the Genesis, man, that's the right word. It's a spark. It's the spark. As Laura said, it's the spark. So, thank you guys for being a part of it. Man, I love you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Tim, send us off, brother.
All right, guys. Absolutely been incredible spending this weekend with you. And I have so much love for all of you who showed up here and who are willing to create the space this weekend to feel it into the future and what we're all going to create out of this. And like I said before, we're gonna deliver this all as recordings so that you and you can rewatch what you need to rewatch. We can continue to spread this message of hope around the globe. And yeah, really but honestly, at the end of the day, like Scott said, it's what can you go out there and do? How can you create, a little more light every day?
Right.
And how can that how can you be a catalyst, even for a smile, even for a little piece? And I guess we're all doing the finger to the thing now, but
ET phone home.
But just to wrap this all up, guys, I just want to let you know how much I deeply appreciate the team, the attendees, the speakers, everyone who played a role in making this possible. And like, I've gotten a lot of kudos, and I deeply appreciate all the kudos, but none of this would have happened without all of you. So, and that's the way the world works. Everything is interconnected, and when you can stand up and do something, like, you draw other people to you, you draw other people with you into the future. So I want you to be that beacon of hope as we leave here. And I'm going to leave it at that. Just be a beacon of hope. Much love.
Much love.